The council chamber was dying. Not literally, of course. The massive dome still floated above the planet Centralis, its walls made of some material that showed the stars outside as clearly as if there were no barrier at all. The seats still rose in circular tiers, each level representing another member species of the Galactic Council. The holographic displays still worked, showing star maps and fleet positions in blue and red light. But everyone in that chamber knew the truth. They were losing the war. Ambassador Taemin walked slowly down the central aisle, his shoes making soft sounds on the polished floor. Behind him, Jiwon carried a data tablet, her face carefully neutral. She had learned in her 3 years as his aide that Taemin preferred silence before important meetings. He needed time to think. Around them, aliens of a dozen different species watched the two humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely hidden contempt. The Altharians, tall and elegant with their silver skin and triple-jointed arms, whispered among themselves. The Krell, massive beings that looked like walking crystals, remained silent as always. Smaller species filled the upper tiers, their homeworlds already consumed by the swarm or dangerously close to falling. Taemin took his seat in the observer section. Humanity had been granted observer status 20 years ago, when Earth's first faster-than-light ship had stumbled into council space. Observer status meant humans could watch and listen but not vote, not speak unless called upon. Not matter, really, in the grand scheme of galactic politics. That was about to change. The council chairman, an Altharian named Vexlar, stood from his central podium. His voice echoed through the chamber, automatically translated into every language present by technology humans were only beginning to understand. "We gather once more in darkness," Vexlar began. "The Varen swarm has taken the Helios system. 4 billion Krell citizens are gone. Their crystals will never sing again. The swarm grows stronger with each world it consumes, and we grow weaker." Murmurs of grief and anger rippled through the chamber. Jiwon glanced at her tablet, checking the numbers again even though she had memorized them. In the past 5 years, the Varen swarm had consumed 73 inhabited worlds. The death toll was beyond counting. Trillions, certainly. Maybe more. No one knew where the swarm came from. It had appeared at the edge of the galaxy like a plague, a hive mind of insect-like creatures that moved from star to star in massive organic ships. They didn't negotiate, didn't communicate. They just consumed everything biological and moved on. "The Council fleet has 40% combat effectiveness," Vexlar continued. "We are building new ships as fast as we can, but our shipyards cannot keep pace with our losses. Our weapons, perfected over 10,000 years of peace, are insufficient against an enemy that feels no fear and takes no prisoners." Another Altharian stood, this one younger with darker silver skin. "We must evacuate the core worlds, fall back to the inner systems, and establish a defensive line we can actually hold." "Cowardice," roared a Krell representative, its voice like grinding rocks. "We do not abandon our worlds." "Your worlds are already gone," the young Altharian shot back. "We're talking about survival now, not pride." The argument spread through the chamber like fire. Species blamed each other for failed strategies, for insufficient resources, for not sacrificing enough. Taemin watched it all with dark eyes that missed nothing. This was what defeat looked like, he thought. Not the clean ending of a battle, but this slow collapse into chaos and blame. Vexlar called for order, and gradually the chamber quieted. "There is one matter left to discuss," he said, and his eyes found Taemin in the observer section. "The human question." Every head in the chamber turned toward Taemin and Jiwon. "Humanity has significant industrial capacity," Vexlar continued. "Your species has built impressive orbital shipyards in a remarkably short time. You have mining operations throughout your home system, resources we desperately need." "Here it comes," Taemin thought. "We propose a contract," Vexlar said. "Humanity will convert its industrial base to produce ships and weapons for the Council fleet. In exchange, you will receive full trading rights, mineral claims in 3 neighboring systems, and a permanent embassy on Centralis." "Not enough," a Krell said. "They should consider it an honor to aid the galaxy in its darkest hour." Taemin stood slowly. Jiwon tensed beside him. They had practiced this moment for weeks, but now that it was here, she felt her heart hammering. "May I speak?" Taemin asked. Vexlar looked surprised, then nodded. "The observer has the floor." Taemin walked down to the central area, standing where everyone could see him clearly. He looked small compared to the towering aliens, but he stood straight and confident. For 20 years, humanity has observed this council, Taman said. His voice was calm, almost conversational. We've watched you keep peace among 1,000 worlds. We've admired your technology, your civilization, your achievements. You've accomplished things we can barely understand. Nods of agreement from several council members. This was what they expected to hear. Praise, then compliance. But we've also watched you fail, Taman continued. We've watched the Varan swarm tear through your fleets like they're made of paper. We've watched you argue and delay while trillions die. We've watched the greatest civilization in the galaxy forget how to fight a war. Angry murmurs now. Jiwan closed her eyes briefly. This was the dangerous part. You want our factories? Taman asked. You want us to build your ships while you decide how to use them? No. That's not what's going to happen. You dare, began Akrel. Humanity will join this war, Taman said loudly, cutting off the objection. But not as your suppliers, not as your servants, as full combatants. We will build our own ships, field our own fleets, and fight under our own commanders. The chamber erupted. Some species shouted in anger at the presumption. Others laughed at the absurdity. Humans fighting a space war? Humans who had barely left their own solar system? Vexlar raised his hands for silence. When the noise died down, he looked at Taman with something between pity and irritation. Ambassador, your courage is admirable. But humanity has no experience in modern warfare. Your ships are primitive. Your tactics untested. Your people have never faced anything like the Varan swarm. You're right, Taman agreed. We've never fought aliens before. But we've fought each other for our entire history. We've had 2 wars that killed millions. We've faced extinction on our own planet from our own actions. We survived predators, plagues, disasters, and our own worst instincts for 200,000 years. He let that sink in for a moment. You've had peace for 10,000 years, Taman said quietly. That's beautiful. That's what we aspire to. But right now you need people who remember how to win ugly. You need people who know that survival isn't about honor or elegance. It's about doing whatever it takes. This is madness, said the young Altherian. This is humanity, Taman replied. He looked directly at Vexlar. We're joining the fight. The only question is whether you'll coordinate with us or get in our way. Vexlar stared at the human for a long moment. Finally, he said, And if we refuse? Taman smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then we'll fight alone if we have to. But I think you're smart enough to know you can't afford to refuse. The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what the human was really saying. The council was desperate. They had no choice but to accept help, even from these strange young aliens who thought they could change the course of an unwinnable war. Very well, Vexlar said. The council will vote on accepting humanity as a full participant in the war effort. Until then, you are dismissed. Taman bowed slightly and walked back toward the exit. Jiwan followed, her tablet clutched against her chest. They could feel thousands of alien eyes watching them leave. Once they were in the corridor outside, Jiwan let out a long breath. That went better than expected. They'll vote yes, Taman said. They have to. Now comes the hard part. What's that? Proving we can actually do what I just promised. Jiwan nodded. Back home, Earth's fleet was preparing for a war they barely understood against an enemy that had destroyed civilizations millions of years old. She hoped Taman was right about humanity's chances. She hoped they all were. Kepler Station hung in the darkness between Earth and Mars, a massive structure of steel and composite materials that served as humanity's primary military shipyard. From a distance, it looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly against the stars. Up close, it was a city in space, housing 40,000 workers and crew members who built the ships that would carry humanity to war. Fleet Admiral Hyun Woo stood in the command center, watching the main display screen that showed the fleet assembling beyond the station. 300 warships, everything humanity could field on short notice. To him, they looked beautiful. To anyone from the Galactic Council, they probably looked like crude metal boxes. Status report, Hyun-woo said. His second officer, Commander Dal-Su, checked his console. All ships report ready for deployment. Crews are at 98% capacity. Weapons loaded and tested. The fleet can move out in 6 hours. Hyun-woo nodded. 6 hours. After that, there was no turning back. Humanity would be at war with an enemy that consumed worlds. He was 60 years old, a career military officer who had served in Earth's last major conflict, the resource wars of the 2210s. That had been brutal enough. Fighting over water and rare minerals as climate change pushed humanity to the edge. But at least his enemies had been human. He understood how they thought, what they feared, how they could be beaten. The Varen swarm didn't fear anything. Didn't negotiate. Didn't stop, Admiral, Dalsu said quietly. Some of the crew are asking questions. About our chances. What are you telling them? The truth. That we're going into unknown territory against an enemy we've only studied from council records. That a lot of us probably won't come home. Hyunwoo smiled grimly. Good, never lie to your crew. They deserve to know what they're facing. The door to the command center opened and Captain Sora walked in, still wearing her flight suit. She was 32, one of the youngest ship captains in the fleet and absolutely fearless. Her ship, the destroyer Incheon's Fury, was considered one of the best in the entire fleet. Admiral, she said, saluting, my crew is ready. We're eager to get moving. Eager, Hyunwoo repeated. You know what you're flying into? Yes, sir. A meat grinder. But someone has to be first through the door, might as well be us. Hyunwoo studied her. Sora had lost her parents in the resource wars. Both of them scientists working on climate solutions when their research station was attacked. She had joined the military at 18 and never looked back. He saw that same hunger for purpose in many of the younger officers. They wanted to prove that humanity mattered. Your ship is assigned to the vanguard, Hyunwoo said. When we engage the enemy, you'll be in the first wave. Sora's eyes lit up. Understood, sir. We won't let you down. After she left, Dalsu shook his head. She's going to get herself killed with that attitude. Maybe, Hyunwoo said. But we need people like her. People who aren't afraid to take risks. The display screen changed, showing new intelligence from council sources. The Varen swarm had launched another attack wave. This time targeting a refugee convoy evacuating the Dalmar system. 30 civilian ships, millions of lives, protected by only a small escort force. Hyunwoo studied the coordinates. The convoy was 2 days away at maximum speed. If the human fleet moved now, they could intercept the swarm before it reached the refugees. It would also be humanity's first real combat test. Change of plans, Hyunwoo said. We move out in 2 hours. All ships, battle stations. Tell the fleet we're going hunting. Dalsu's fingers flew over his console, sending out the orders. Throughout Kepler Station and in the ships beyond, alarms began to sound. Crews ran to their posts. Engines powered up. Weapon systems went live. The war had begun. 2 days later, the human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Dalmar system. The main display immediately lit up with contacts. The refugee convoy was there, 30 massive ships packed with families and their belongings. The escort force, 3 council warships, was engaging the Viren swarm, and the swarm was massive, 60 organic ships that looked like twisted combinations of insects and space vessels. Each one the size of a city block. They moved with eerie coordination, flowing around the council ships like water. Analysis, Hyunwoo ordered. Dalsu pulled up the tactical data. The council ships are using standard defensive patterns. Energy shields, beam weapons, formation flying. The swarm is adapting to every tactic. They've already disabled 1 escort ship. Hyunwoo watched the battle unfold. The council fought with precision and elegance, their ships moving in perfect formation, their weapons firing in carefully calculated patterns. It was beautiful to watch. It was also failing. The swarm simply absorbed the attacks, sacrificing smaller ships to protect larger ones, constantly adapting and overwhelming through sheer numbers. Sir, Sora's voice came over the communications channel, requesting permission to engage. Denied, Hyunwoo said. All ships hold position. He could hear the frustration in Sora's response, but she obeyed. Hyunwoo needed to see more, understand more before he committed his fleet. The council ships fought bravely. They really did. But one by one they were being cut off from each other, surrounded by swarm vessels that tore into their shields with biological weapons that seemed to eat through energy barriers. They're going to lose, Dalsu said quietly. Yes, Hyunwoo agreed, but we're not going to fight like they do. Open fleet-wide channel. Dalsu pressed a button. Every ship in the human fleet could now hear their admiral. All ships, this is Hyunwoo, he said. What you're watching right now is how the galaxy fights wars. Precision, honor, rules of engagement. It's very impressive. It's also getting everyone killed. We're going to show them the human way. He paused, making sure everyone was listening. We're going to fight dirty. We're going to fight mean. We're going to use every trick, every tactic, every weapon we have. The swarm doesn't care about honor, and neither do we. Our job is to protect those refugees and kill every single one of these aliens. Sora, your wing goes first. Deploy the noise. Yes, sir. Sora's voice was excited. The Incheon's fury shot forward, leading 20 other destroyers toward the swarm. As they closed distance, every ship began broadcasting on all frequencies at maximum power. Not words. Not messages. Just noise. Horrible, chaotic static and sound that human engineers had specifically designed to be as disruptive as possible. The effect on the swarm was immediate. The organic ships began to twitch and shudder. Their perfect coordination broke apart. The hive mind that connected them couldn't function through the wall of noise humanity was creating. Second wave, Hyun-woo ordered. Launch missiles. The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Not elegant energy weapons, but simple, crude missiles. Thousands of them. More than any defense system could track or intercept. The missiles were dumb, barely guided, but there were so many that it didn't matter. They slammed into the swarm ships like a metal storm. Explosions bloomed across the organic hulls. Ships broke apart. The formation collapsed into chaos. Third wave, close combat, Hyun-woo said. All cruisers ramming speed. The larger human ships accelerated toward the swarm. Their crews had already evacuated to protected sections. When the cruisers hit damaged swarm vessels, they hit hard, using their own mass as weapons. Metal tore into organic material. Hulls ruptured. The void of space claimed more victims. It was brutal. It was ugly. It wasn't how civilized species fought wars. It worked. Within 20 minutes, the swarm force was destroyed. 60 ships reduced to debris and floating organic matter. The refugee convoy was safe. The surviving council escort ships drifted in space, their crews probably stunned by what they had just witnessed. Hyun-woo let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. All ships report casualties. 4 destroyers damaged, Dalsu said. 2 will need major repairs. 17 crew members dead, 43 wounded. 17 dead. Hyun-woo felt the weight of each name that would soon come across his desk. But he had saved millions. That was the trade, sir, the communications officer said. We're receiving a transmission from the council escort flagship. The captain wants to speak with you. Put it on screen. An Altherian appeared on the display, his silver face showing clear shock. Human Admiral, I'm Captain Lenvar. I don't know what to say. You saved us. But your tactics, they were effective? Hyun-woo suggested. Barbaric, Lenvar said quietly. You sacrificed your own ships. Used weapons that cause maximum suffering. Fought without any sense of honor or restraint. Yes, Hyun-woo agreed. And your people are alive because of it. Captain, I respect your traditions. But this war won't be won with precision and elegance. It'll be won by whoever is willing to do what it takes to survive. Lenvar was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. I will report this to the council. I suspect they will have much to discuss. The transmission ended. Dalsu looked at Hyun-woo. The galaxy is going to have strong opinions about what we just did. Let them, Hyun-woo said. Sora, bring your wing back for repairs. All ships stand down from battle stations. Well done, everyone. You just showed the galaxy that humanity knows how to fight. In her cockpit, Sora smiled as she guided her damaged ship back toward the fleet. Her hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline, but she felt alive. They had faced the enemy that terrified the entire galaxy. Altheria Prime hung in space like a jewel, its silver cities visible even from orbit. It was one of the oldest worlds in the galaxy, home to 15 billion Altherians whose civilization had existed longer than humanity had been using tools. Its libraries contained the wisdom of 10,000 years. Its art galleries held treasures that made Earth's greatest museums look like storage closets. The Varan swarm wanted to consume it all. Ji-won stood in the observation deck of the command carrier Sejong, watching the planet through the massive window. She had been promoted from ambassador's aide to strategic coordinator, which meant she now had the terrible job of watching battles unfold and calculating acceptable losses. She hated it. Status update, she said into her communicator. A tactical officer's voice responded. The swarm's main force is 3 hours out. Intelligence estimates 2,000 ships, the largest offensive they've launched since the war began. The Council fleet is in defensive position around the planet. We have 400 ships. The humans have sent 200, 2,000 against 600. The math was not encouraging. Ji-won pulled up the defensive formation on her tablet. The Council ships formed 3 concentric rings around Altheria Prime, each ring positioned to support the others. It was a classic defensive strategy, designed to make the swarm pay for every inch of space. The human fleet was positioned differently. Admiral Hyunwoo had refused to integrate into the Council formation. Instead, his ships floated in loose clusters at odd angles, seemingly without pattern or purpose. The Council commanders had complained, loudly, but Hyunwoo had insisted, and Ambassador Tae-min had backed him up. Now everyone was watching to see if human tactics would work on this scale, or if it had just been luck at the refugee convoy. Incoming transmission from Admiral Hyunwoo, the communications officer announced. Ji-won accepted it. The Admiral's face appeared on her screen, looking tired but focused. Behind him she could see the bridge of his flagship, crew members working at their stations. Coordinator Ji-won, Hyunwoo said, "I need you to prepare casualty estimates." "I've already run the numbers," Ji-won replied. "If the swarm commits everything, the Council fleet will lose 60 to 70% of their ships." "The human fleet?" "Probably 80%. The planet will hold, but barely." Hyunwoo nodded like he had expected this answer. "And if we try something unconventional?" "Depends on what you mean by unconventional. I'm sending you a tactical plan. Look it over and tell me the cost." Ji-won's tablet chimed. She opened the file and started reading. Her eyes grew wider with each paragraph. "This is insane," she whispered. "Is it workable?" Hyunwoo asked. Ji-won ran the numbers through her simulation software. The results made her stomach hurt. "It's workable. But the casualties—" "Admiral, you'll lose half your fleet in the first 20 minutes. "Only half?" Hyunwoo smiled grimly. "Better than I estimated. Send it to the Council commanders. Tell them it's their choice. They can fight their way and probably lose the planet, or they can trust us." The transmission ended. Ji-won sat alone with the tactical plan, feeling the weight of thousands of lives in her hands. She thought about sending the plan up the chain for approval, but Tae-min had been clear. In combat situations, field commanders had authority to make decisions. That was the human way. She sent the plan to the Council fleet. 10 minutes later, the Council command channel exploded with arguments. 3 hours later, the Varen swarm arrived. Captain Sora watched them come on her display screen. 2,000 organic ships, each one pulsing with sickly bioluminescence. They moved like a living organism, flowing and shifting in response to some shared consciousness humans couldn't understand. "All crew battle stations," Sora said calmly. Her destroyer, the Incheon's Fury, had been repaired after the last fight and was ready for another round. "Weapons free. Prepare for Pattern Delta." Pattern Delta was the code name for Admiral Hyunwoo's plan. Most of her crew didn't know what it meant yet. They would find out soon enough. The swarm split into multiple attack formations, each one targeting a different section of the defensive line. They were learning, adapting to previous encounters. They knew the Council would form a shield wall and try to hold position. What they didn't expect was for part of that wall to charge. "All human ships," Hyunwoo's voice came across the command channel. "Execute Pattern Delta. Remember, speed is survival. Hit them hard and keep moving." The human fleet surged forward, abandoning defensive positions and accelerating straight toward the swarm. 200 ships moving at full speed, looking like they were committing suicide. The Council ships held their positions, confused by the human action. The swarm, sensing easy prey, shifted more ships toward the charging humans. "Perfect," Sora thought. "Launch decoys," she ordered. The human fleet released thousands of small drones, each one broadcasting fake energy signatures that made them look like ships. The swarm's sensors, designed to track heat and electromagnetic signatures, couldn't tell the difference between a real ship and a clever fake. The swarm split its attention, trying to intercept all the targets at once, and while they were distracted, the human ships reached their real objective: the debris field. A month ago, a massive asteroid mining operation had been abandoned near Altheria Prime when the swarm threat became serious. The field was full of rocks, metal fragments, and industrial equipment floating in space. The Council fleet had positioned itself away from the debris. Considering it a navigation hazard, the humans flew right into it. "Deploy the packages," Sora said. Her ship and dozens of others dropped small cargo containers throughout the debris field. Each container held something simple, something that had been around for hundreds of years on Earth. Nuclear mines. All ships clear the zone, Hyunwoo ordered. 30 seconds. The human fleet reversed course, flying back toward the council lines at maximum speed. The swarm, sensing retreat, pursued. 2,000 organic ships flowing into the debris field, chasing what they thought was a beaten enemy. Detonate, Hyunwoo said. Space turned white. Dozens of nuclear explosions bloomed simultaneously throughout the debris field. Each mine alone would have barely scratched a swarm ship's hull. But the mines weren't meant to directly damage ships. They were meant to turn the debris into weapons. The nuclear blasts sent millions of chunks of rock and metal flying in all directions at incredible speeds. In the vacuum of space, nothing slowed them down. They became a storm of shrapnel moving at thousands of meters per second. The swarm ships, packed closely together in pursuit, flew directly into the storm. It was like watching a living thing die. Organic hulls were punctured by thousands of impacts. Ships tumbled out of control, leaking atmosphere and fluids into space. The swarm's tight formation turned into a liability as damaged ships collided with each other. In less than 5 minutes, the swarm lost over 800 ships. On the Sejong, Ji-won watched the display with tears running down her face. The plan had worked, but she was also watching the human casualty reports come in. Ships that hadn't cleared the blast zone in time, crews exposed to radiation, reactors damaged beyond repair, 43 human ships gone, 8,000 people dead in an instant. The swarm is reforming, a tactical officer reported. They're adapting faster than predicted. 1,200 ships still combat effective and moving toward the planet. The council fleet is engaging, another officer said. On her screen, Ji-won watched the council ships finally move to the attack. They had seen what the humans sacrificed to weaken the swarm. Now it was their turn to fight. The battle lasted 6 more hours. It was brutal and desperate. The swarm learned from every mistake, adapted to every tactic. They pushed through the council's defensive rings, reaching the planet's orbital defenses. But they were weakened, disrupted, no longer the unstoppable force they had been. Admiral Hyunwoo's flagship took 17 direct hits, protecting a damaged Altherian carrier. Captain Sora's destroyer lost half its weapon systems but kept fighting until its ammunition ran out. Human ships formed suicide screens, blocking swarm attacks with their own hulls while council ships repositioned. Finally, as the battle reached its peak, the swarm pulled back. They had lost too many ships, taken too much damage. The hive mind calculated that victory was no longer probable. Altheria Prime was saved. The cost was staggering. The council fleet lost 230 ships. The human fleet lost 96. Over 30,000 people dead across both forces. The orbital defense platforms were damaged. 2 of Altheria Prime's cities had taken hits from weapons fire that broke through. But the planet survived. 15 billion lives saved. Ji-won sat in the observation deck, staring at the casualty list on her tablet. So many names. So many families who would receive the worst news possible. She thought about writing something, some report that would explain why the deaths had been necessary. There were no words adequate to that task. Taemin found her there an hour later. He looked older, lines of stress visible on his face. "The Altherian Council wants to meet with us," he said quietly. "They're calling an emergency session. Are we in trouble?" Ji-won asked. "I don't know. We use nuclear weapons in their home system. We sacrificed ships and people they think should have been saved. We fought in ways they consider barbaric." Taemin sat down next to her. The emergency session of the Galactic Council felt different this time. Taemin noticed it the moment he walked into the chamber. The observer section where humanity used to sit was empty. Instead, he had been directed to a seat on the main floor, in the same tier as the founding members of the council, equal status. Finally. But the looks he received from other council members were not celebratory. Some showed respect, others showed fear. A few showed barely concealed disgust. Ji-won walked beside him, carrying her tablet as always. She had barely slept since the battle for Altheria Prime 3 days ago. None of them had. The victory had been decisive, but the methods used had sent shockwaves through galactic society. "Are you ready for this?" Ji-won whispered. "No," Taemin admitted. "But that's never stopped us before." They took their seats. Around them, hundreds of alien species filled the chamber's tiers. The Altherians, the Krell, the Dalmar, and dozens of others. All of them had come to watch humanity face judgment. Chairman Vexlar stood at the central podium, his silver face grim. This council recognizes Ambassador Tae-min of Earth. We gather to discuss the recent battle for Altheria Prime and the implications of human combat doctrine. Here we go, Tae-min thought. A Krell representative stood, its crystalline form catching the light. The humans used nuclear weapons in a populated star system. Such weapons have been banned by galactic law for 8,000 years. The radiation alone could have poisoned Altheria Prime for generations. But it didn't, Tae-min said calmly. We calculated the safe distance. The explosions occurred in a debris field far from the planet. No radioactive material entered the atmosphere. You couldn't have known that for certain, the Krell argued. You took an unacceptable risk. Another voice spoke up, this time a young Altherian. The humans sacrificed 43 ships unnecessarily. Those crews could have been saved with proper defensive protocols. Tae-min stood looking up at the speaker. Saved for what? To watch from safety while the swarm consumed your homeworld. Those crews knew what they were doing. They volunteered. They were children, the Altherian shouted. The youngest captain in your fleet is 32 years old. You sent children to die. In human society, 32 is an adult, Ji-won said quietly from her seat. Old enough to choose. Old enough to understand sacrifice, the debate continued, growing more heated. Species that had lost worlds to the swarm argued that human tactics, while effective, violated the fundamental principles of civilized warfare. Others pointed out that civilized warfare was why they were losing. Finally, an elder Krell stood. Its crystal body was ancient, formed over thousands of years, and when it spoke, the entire chamber listened. I am Korval, oldest member of this council. I have lived for 4,000 years. In that time, I have seen the galaxy at peace. We built a civilization based on cooperation, not conflict. We resolved our differences through negotiation, not violence. For 10,000 years, we have avoided the barbarism of total war. The elder paused, its crystalline eyes somehow managing to convey sadness. And now we face extinction because we forgot how to fight. Murmurs spread through the chamber. An elder Krell speaking in favor of human methods was unexpected. The humans are brutal, Korval continued. They use weapons we abandoned. They sacrifice lives we would try to save. They fight without honor or restraint. This is true. Tae-min waited for the condemnation he knew was coming. But they win, Korval said. They win because they understand something we forgot. That survival is not about being right or civilized or honorable. It is about being alive when the battle is over. The humans saved Altheria Prime. They saved 15 billion lives. If we are too proud to learn from them, then we deserve to fall to the swarm. The chamber erupted in arguments. Species shouted at each other, old alliances fracturing over the question of how to fight a war they were losing. Vexlar called for order, but the chaos continued. Finally, he used the chamber's sound system to amplify his voice to painful levels. The noise stopped. Ambassador Tae-min, Vexlar said, this council is divided. Some wish to embrace your methods. Others believe they will destroy what we are trying to save. Perhaps you can help us understand. Why does humanity fight the way it does? Tae-min looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species who had been traveling between stars when his ancestors were still living in caves. May I show you something? He asked. Vexlar nodded. Tae-min pulled out a small data chip and handed it to a council technician. A moment later, the chamber's holographic display activated. Images appeared in the air above the central floor. Earth. Beautiful and blue and familiar. Then the images changed. Cities in ruins, forests burning, oceans choked with plastic, people starving in the streets, armies marching, bombs falling, the worst moments of human history, displayed for everyone to see. This is what we did to ourselves, Tae-min said quietly. Not the swarm, not some external threat. We nearly destroyed our own world because we couldn't stop fighting each other. The wars you see here killed hundreds of millions of people. They poisoned our air and water. They pushed us to the edge of extinction. The images continued. Concentration camps, nuclear explosions, biological weapons. Every horror humanity had inflicted on itself. Why are you showing us this? A Dalmar representative asked. Because you need to understand where we come from, Tae-min replied. You had 10,000 years of peace. We had 10,000 years of war. Not against aliens, against ourselves. Every human alive today carries that history. We know what it means to fight for survival because we've been doing it since we first stood upright. The images changed again. this time showing recovery. Humans rebuilding cities, cleaning oceans, uniting under a single government. Reaching for the stars, we learned, Taemin said. We learned that we were stronger together than apart. We learned that survival required sacrifice. We learned that sometimes you have to do terrible things to prevent worse things from happening. These aren't lessons we're proud of, but they're lessons we needed. He gestured to the images of Earth's recovery. You look at human tactics and see barbarism. We look at them and see survival. You think we fight without honor. We think honor doesn't matter if everyone is dead. You want to win this war while preserving your civilization. We want to preserve your civilization by winning the war. Maybe both approaches are necessary. Taemin sat down. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then a young Krell officer stood. Taemin recognized him, Baksu, one of the Krell who had been assigned to observe human fleet operations. I have served with the human fleet for 6 months, Baksu said. His voice was young, uncertain, but determined. I have watched them fight. I have studied their methods. At first I thought, like many of you, that they were savages who didn't understand civilized warfare. He looked directly at the elder Krell. I was wrong. The humans understand war better than we do because they've never stopped fighting. They know how to make hard decisions. They know how to calculate acceptable losses. They know that in total war there are no clean victories. Baksu's crystalline form seemed to pulse with emotion. I request permission to train with human forces full-time, to learn their tactics and bring them back to the Krell military. If we want to survive, we need to learn how to fight like they do. The elder Krell studied the young officer for a long moment. Then it nodded slowly. Permission granted. Others should follow your example. More voices spoke up now, young officers from various species, asking to train with human forces. Older commanders grudgingly admitting that traditional tactics had failed. The tide in the chamber was turning. Finally, Vexlar stood. It seems we have a consensus forming. The Council will vote on a proposal to adopt elements of human combat doctrine across all allied forces. This will include the use of previously banned weapons, revised rules of engagement, and acceptance of higher casualty rates in pursuit of strategic objectives. You're asking us to become like humans, someone said. No, Vexlar replied. We're asking ourselves to remember that survival requires adaptation. The humans showed us a different way to fight. We don't have to abandon who we are, but we do need to learn from species who have experience with total war. The vote was called. Species by species, the Council registered their decisions. Some voted yes with enthusiasm, others with reluctance. A few voted no, unwilling to compromise their principles even facing extinction. The final tally, 63% in favor. The motion passes, Vexlar announced. From this day forward, the Council military will operate under revised protocols. Human advisors will be assigned to all major fleet operations. Ambassador Taemin, your people have earned a voice in how this war is fought. Taemin bowed his head. We'll do our best to honor that trust. After the session ended, Jiwan found Taemin in a small observation room overlooking Centralis. He stood alone watching the planet below. You should be celebrating, Jiwan said. We won. The Council accepted our methods. Did we win? Taemin asked. We convinced an entire galaxy to abandon 10,000 years of progress. To use weapons they swore they'd never touch again. To accept casualties they would have considered unthinkable. Is that really winning? It's survival, Jiwan said. That's what you told them. I know what I told them. 2 years had passed since humanity joined the war. 2 years of grinding battles, strategic retreats, desperate last stands, and slow, bloody progress. The galaxy had learned to fight like humans, and it was winning. Barely. Now finally, they were going to end it. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of his flagship, Sol's Hammer, looking at the tactical display. Before him floated a 3-dimensional map of the Varan home cluster, 5 star systems in close proximity where the swarm had originated. Intelligence suggested that somewhere in that cluster was the Queen world, the central node where the swarm's consciousness originated. Kill the Queen, kill the swarm. At least that was the theory. Around Sol's Hammer, the combined fleet of 47 species prepared for the final assault. 3,000 ships, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Human vessels flew alongside Altherian carriers and Krell battleships. Young officers like Baksu commanded mixed-species crews who had learned to fight together. The unity was beautiful. The cost had been terrible. Status report, Hyunwoo said. He was 62 now, gray-haired and carrying the weight of 100 battles. Commander Dalsu, still at his side after all these years, checked his displays. All fleet elements report ready. Vanguard forces are in position. Captain Sora sends her regards and says her suicide squadron is eager to get started. Hyunwoo smiled despite himself. Sora had survived every battle of the war. Her ship rebuilt 3 times and somehow still called Incheon's fury. She had become something of a legend, the human captain who wouldn't die no matter what the swarm threw at her. Tell Sora that I expect her to survive this one too, Hyunwoo said. We're going to need experienced captains after the war. If there is an after, he thought but didn't say. The plan was simple in concept, nightmare in execution. The suicide squadron, led by Sora, would punch through the swarm's outer defenses and create a corridor for the main fleet. Once through, they would locate the Queen World and destroy it. The swarm would throw everything at them, but the fleet had to hold long enough for a ground team to reach the surface. Simple, and almost certainly impossible. Incoming transmission from the command carrier, Dalsu said. Taemin's face appeared on the screen. The ambassador looked older too, his face lined with stress. Behind him, Jiwon worked at a tactical station coordinating the massive fleet. Admiral, Taemin said, the council has given final authorization. You're cleared to begin the assault. Understood, Hyunwoo replied. Ambassador, if this doesn't work, it'll work, Taemin said firmly. We've come too far to fail now. Good luck, old friend. The transmission ended. Hyunwoo took a deep breath and opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Hyunwoo. 2 years ago, humanity joined this war. They told us we were too young, too inexperienced, too barbaric to make a difference. They were right about one thing. We are barbaric. We fight in ways that horrify civilized species, but today that barbarism ends this war. He paused, knowing that thousands of crew members across 3,000 ships were listening. The swarm has consumed trillions of lives, destroyed hundreds of worlds. It thinks it's unstoppable. Today we prove it wrong. Today we show the galaxy that no enemy is unbeatable. Today we fight for every species, every world, every life that deserves a future. Sora, your squadron is cleared to engage. Good hunting. Sora's voice came back immediately. Acknowledged, Admiral. Suicide Squadron, follow me in. Let's show them why you never corner a human. 20 destroyers broke formation and accelerated toward the swarm's defensive line. They were small, fast, and loaded with every weapon humans could imagine. Their mission was to punch a hole and hold it open. Most of them wouldn't survive. The swarm detected the attack immediately. Organic ships flowed forward like a living tide, thousands of them, all focused on stopping the suicide squadron. Space filled with weapons fire, biological projectiles and energy beams crisscrossing in a deadly web. Sora's ship weaved through the attack, her reflexes honed by 2 years of constant combat. Around her, destroyers died. The Moonlight crashed into a swarm vessel, its reactor detonating and taking 3 enemy ships with it. The Busan Pride lost half its hull but kept firing until nothing was left. We're through, Sora reported. Corridor is open but won't last long. Main fleet, move now. The combined fleet surged forward. 3,000 ships entering the gap that 20 had died to create. The swarm tried to close the corridor, but the remaining destroyers fought like demons, spending their lives to buy seconds. Hyunwoo watched the tactical display as his fleet pushed deeper into enemy territory. Losses mounted. Ships disappeared from the display one by one, crews dying to protect the vessels behind them. Queen World located, Dalsu announced. 3rd planet in the central system. Massive organic structure on the surface, consistent with a central consciousness node. All ships converge on the Queen World, Hyunwoo ordered. Planetary Assault Force, prepare for insertion. On the troop carrier Young-ho, Sergeant Young-sik checked his armor one last time. He was 40 years old, a veteran of Earth's resource wars who had volunteered for this mission. Around him, 200 Marines from a dozen different species did the same. They were the ground team, the ones who would actually plant the charges that would kill the Queen. Listen up, Young-sik said to his mixed species squad. The Navy is paying a hell of a price to get us to that planet. We don't waste their sacrifice. We get down there, we find the Queen, we plant the charges, and we get out. Simple. Nothing about this is simple, muttered a young Altharian Marine named Kwan Ho. Then we make it simple, Young Sik replied. Ready weapons. Check your seals. Once we're down there, we move fast and we don't stop. The fleet reached orbit around the Queen world. It was ugly, a planet of twisted organic structures and sickly colors. The surface pulsed with bioluminescence like the planet itself was breathing. Defensive fire is intense, Dalsu reported. We're losing ships fast. Keep pushing, Hyunwoo ordered. He watched another cruiser disappear from the display. Assault force, you're cleared for insertion. The troop carrier dropped toward the planet, surrounded by escort ships that died protecting it. In the sky above, the largest space battle in history raged. Ships burned. Crews died. The void filled with debris and the ghosts of the fallen. The troop carrier crashed through the atmosphere, its hull glowing red from atmospheric friction. Swarm creatures swarmed around it, trying to tear it apart before it could land. 30 seconds to touchdown, the pilot announced. The carrier hit the surface hard, its landing gear breaking on impact. The rear door exploded outward and Marines poured out into a nightmare landscape. The Queen world was alive. The ground moved beneath their feet. Organic structures reached toward them like grasping hands. Swarm creatures erupted from the soil, defending their queen with mindless fury. Move, Young Sik shouted. Follow the beacon. The squad ran across the living landscape, fighting every step. Marines died. Baksu, the young Krell officer who had learned to fight like a human, took a hit that shattered part of his crystalline body but kept moving. The Queen structure rose before them, a massive organic tower that pulsed with alien consciousness. Young Sik could feel it in his mind, a pressure that tried to overwhelm his thoughts. Plant the charges, he ordered. Kwanho, cover the entrance. Everyone else, work fast. Marines placed antimatter charges around the base of the structure. Each charge was enough to level a city. Together, they would erase the Queen from existence. Charges set, a Marine reported. Timer active. 10 minutes to detonation. All units fall back to the extraction point, Young Sik ordered. They ran. The Queen world fought back with everything it had. The ground tried to swallow them. Creatures attacked from all sides. Marines fell one by one, buying time for others to escape. Young Sik made it to the extraction point with 30 survivors. The troop carrier was gone, destroyed during the landing. But a battered human destroyer, Sora's Inchan's Fury, limped down through the atmosphere. Get on, Sora's voice crackled over the radio. We're leaving now. The survivors scrambled aboard. Young Sik was the last one on, turning to see the Queen structure still pulsing in the distance. Go, he shouted. The Inchan's Fury lifted off just as the charges detonated. Antimatter explosions tore through the Queen world. A chain reaction of destruction that spread from the central structure outward. The planet's surface cracked. The organic structures collapsed. The consciousness that had driven the swarm screamed across quantum frequencies and died. In orbit, the effect was immediate. Swarm ships stopped moving. They drifted, their coordination gone, their purpose extinguished. The hive mind that had connected them was dead. All ships cease fire, Hyunwoo ordered. Target the drifting vessels, but hold position. Monitor for any sign of renewed activity. Minutes passed, then hours. The swarm ships continued to drift, lifeless. Slowly, cautiously, the fleet began to believe. They had won. The cost was staggering. The human fleet had lost 60% of its ships, 12 million people dead, including most of the Suicide Squadron. The Council forces had suffered similar losses. Entire species had sent every ship they had, and none would return. But the galaxy was saved. 3 months later, Earth held a memorial service.